Hi, it's Tessa with Hip Over 50. So, if you tuned into this channel before, you know that I'm sharing my journey moving back to England after growing up in Canada and the US most of my life, and I hope by sharing my journey it will help you with yours. So, where do we Americans live in the UK? And yes, I have American citizenship as well as British. It's a known fact that only about 37% of Americans actually have a passport, which is kind of surprising to a lot of other people in the world. But then again, my theory is we only get about 10 holiday days per year. So that may explain some of the reason we don't roam too far afield. But those 37% are definitely interested in coming over to England and the UK. And they are definitely interested in investing in the UK too, which is one of the major reasons people come and live here. Apple has a shiny new headquarters at Battersea Park in London, and Meta and Alphabet both have new facilities at London's new tech hub in King's Cross area. And at number 1 Grosvenor Square, which is the former US Embassy, well, if you want to spend up to £30 million on a posh new residence there and you are a US tech mogul, well, you will have a lot of company. Out of the 30 families who have moved in, 10 of them were US tech moguls. So also US venture capitalists, sensing some deals to be had, like to move into London too. And it doesn't hurt that the dollar is quite strong against the pound. The pound is at historic lows, which is great if you're coming over here with dollars. Right now, the exchange rate is around $1.20 to $1.25. During the pandemic, it actually was almost at parity with the pound. The dollar and the pound were almost equal. So that definitely gave some people who had cash to spend the motivation to come over and see what they could find. So American investors are moving here to invest in real estate as well. Cash buyers from the US think that currency discount is a great time to take a punt on a historic pile, their very own Downton Abbey, if you will. So, for example, in September of 22, the chief exec of Blackstone, a New York investment company, bought a 17th century Wiltshire country estate, which is the next county over from mine, for £80 million. That's a cool $100 million, folks. So Americans' fondness for the British lifestyle extends also to the area of the Cotswolds, where that's always been a favorite spot for second homes. And now that the posh new flagship Restoration Hardware, or RH, has opened at Onyo Park, not to mention Soho Farmhouse, well, it's put the area back on the posh radar. Not that it ever really left. By the way, Onyo isn't technically in the Cotswolds. It's actually north of Oxford in the pricey shopping village of Bicester. So another reason Americans like to have a home here is they may have kids at uni here or university, like Oxford or Cambridge, or they may be alumni themselves and feel they have strong ties to this area and want to come back. There's also been cited as it's a safe place to park your money. I guess if you have a lot of money and you're looking for a place to park it, you can invest in an estate with lots of land, and the land can hopefully pay its own way while your estate gradually increases in capital. So I think, yeah, it's also looked as a legacy investment for the children. So yeah, that is, well, maybe land is cheaper here than it is in the US. It's no surprise that due to politics, right, climate change, and the exchange rate, that Americans look at the UK a little more favorably, especially if they are, personally concerned about forest fires in their backyard. Not to mention the potential for incendiary leadership at both state and federal levels right now, and you know what I'm talking about. So obviously climate change exists all over the world, but the UK has a relatively mild climate with relatively small chances of really severe weather disasters. Very mild compared to what I've experienced in the US. Although that doesn't include rain. We like to do epic amounts of rain here. And not just tech moguls, but US celebrities like to have a home here as well. So one of the most famous, of course, is Tom Cruise, who loves to make his Mission Impossible movies here with the filming facilities. And then there's Angelina Jolie, Gwyneth Paltrow, J-Lo and Ben, and George and Amal Clooney, to name a few. And let's not forget Ted Lasso with the Lasso Effect in Richmond, London. That was a great show to highlight the differences between UK and US culture, wasn't it? And then there's the actor Ryan Reynolds, who's put Wrexham, Wales on the map with his show on sport. So those are some of the reasons why the UK and England in particular is a very attractive destination, but where do the majority of Americans choose to live once we get here? Well, first of all, there's only about 170,000 US citizens living in the UK as of 2021, and that's not an exact number. The number fluctuates, and that represents only about 0.01% of the total population of the UK, which is around 67 million at the moment. So we are just a very small drop in the bucket. And while you think, based on what I've just told you, that that number is steadily going up and up, well, not really. It has in the last couple of years, like I said, I think due to a lot of investors coming over here. But over the years, especially since the recession, it's gone up and down over the years. So it hasn't really increased that much because Americans tend to be mobile. And we may come over for a few months or a few years and then leave and go back to the US. Of course, Americans are gravitating towards living in London because that is seen as the nipple ultra of city life. It's a fabulous city to live in. But surprisingly, the largest cluster of Yanks in England or the UK is in the county of Suffolk. It's the site of one of the largest U.S. Air Force bases in the world, Mildenhall. And, we came over to kind of help out during the Second World War, and we just kind of stuck around. So, and thanks to a legacy of Cold War and NATO cooperation, this base and its locale was home to the majority of U.S.-born citizens living in the U.K. for quite a long time. But in the past 20 years, those numbers have gone down, and London numbers of Americans moving in have gone up, as you would expect. So, of course, I'm talking mainly about England, but Americans are also the biggest group of foreign homeowners in Scotland. We do like a little bit of a Highland fling. In the early 1990s, around the time that Cold War ended, well, the highest percentage of Americans living in the UK overall lived in Scotland, and mainly in the seaside town of Argyll and Bute, which you probably never heard of. But the Holy Loch US Navy base was the reason. So, military bases, as I've said, have seen a decline in US born residents, while London has seen a steep increase. In fact, 36% of Americans who live in the UK live in London. And we like the very posh, status conscious, affluent neighborhoods like Chelsea, Kensington, Hyde Park, Regent's Park, and Highgate. So after London and Mildenhall, the Suffolk County, the greatest number of US-born residents live in the south, primarily the southeast and southwest of England. If you were to draw a diagonal line, you go north of London, go to Norfolk, and then down diagonally across England to, let's say, Bristol and the Bristol Channel. Most of us live south of that line, with the majority living in London. And it's probably no surprise. We get off the plane and we want to just have, a 2 or 3 hour commute to get to our second home, or we're more familiar with the countryside in the areas of, let's say, London, the Cotswolds, and Bath, because, hey, we've been watching it on TV for decades, right? All those fabulous series, the film shows, everything. The countryside in the south of England is most familiar to most Americans, and it's easy access to both Heathrow and Gatwick airports for those international flights back to the U.S. And it's even in spite of the fact that these southern areas are the most expensive property-wise in the UK. So take a look and see what you think. If you are eligible for a move to the UK, I'll put some links below. You can also find out a lot of good information on hipover50.com, all about visas, etc., etc. Keep in mind that last year there was over 1 million immigrants into the UK with the visa, but then again, half as many of those moved out, emigrated. So there was a net gain of only about 500,000 new residents in the UK. So there might be just a little bit of space for you to squeeze into if you want to come over. If you do come over, though, just be sure to bring your brolly and your wellies. So there you go. I hope that was helpful and informative. I love it when you watch the videos. And of course, comment or question below, and I'll be happy to try to answer them. And I will see you on the next video. Take care of yourself. Bye for now.